Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Cade, joined by Andrew, and today we are going to be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors from 1987. Andrew, before we dive into our pros, first thing I want to ask you is, in your opinion, is this the best Elm Street sequel?
The best sequel? Absolutely, because this is a series with some not so great sequels. And if we ever get to Dream Child or Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, we will definitely talk about those. And while I do like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, this is still my favorite because this feels more like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie without the meta tone of New Nightmare. But yeah, no, this is easily the best sequel.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think this and New Nightmare are kind of tied for me because I really like New Nightmare, but this one's also good. But tell you what, let's start off with our pros of this movie. So, getting into the plot, what I want to highlight about the plot of this movie is I really like the idea of a group of characters banding together to take on Freddy in the dream world. You know, seeing them be able to use their gifts in the dreams against Freddy and the companionship that these characters have is all something that I really like. It's also a unique storyline because it's a great way to show the potential of this franchise because these movies can really utilize the whole concept of the dream world. And if you think about it, they could really almost do anything that they wanted in terms of creativity.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally bound only by your own imagination. And that's basically endless if you have the right person thinking about it.
Yeah, and another aspect of the plot that I enjoy is definitely the main location. I really like the inclusion of the Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital. On one hand, it's a great way to force these characters to work together and rely on each other to survive, but also the fact that the characters and essentially the audience are kind of trapped in this facility is a great way to build suspense because it makes us feel like we're trapped in this place with them, if you think about it.
Yeah, this is something I've brought up. I don't know if it was reviews or just in some of our favorite movie conversations. I love the feeling of feeling trapped in a movie. And this is, again, this definitely does that too, because you're only in a couple of different locations. And again, most of it's this very cramped, cold, clinical feeling hospital, which just sort of ups the tension because, you can't relax.
Well, and interestingly enough, regarding the plot of this movie, and fun fact for anyone who might not know this, this wasn't Wes Craven's initial pitch for this movie because he was involved with this movie from a writing perspective, and his first pitch for Dream Warriors was actually what he eventually pitched for New Nightmare, where Freddy invades the real world and began targeting the people involved with making an Elm Street sequel. But New Line Cinema wasn't really interested in that concept, so it was rejected. And, while I really like New Nightmare, I am glad that they went with this concept instead.
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer this for this early in the franchise still. New Nightmare, I think, works better later on in the series after it has sort of reached that nadir of quality. So it kind of needed that freshening up of the ideas of New Nightmare. This works better in this point in the franchise because it is still focusing on both new characters and old. And that's actually one of my biggest pros in this movie is I love all the characters. You got Nancy Thompson, you got Dr. Gordon, you got Kristen, Kincaid, Taryn, you got Lieutenant Thompson back. Max, played by a very, very young Lawrence Fishburne, and of course, Freddy Krueger himself. It's a great collection of characters, both old and new. When it comes to films that try to bring in legacy, well, maybe legacy character might not be the right term for this, since this isn't a 30-year later sequel, but trying to combine characters you already love and create new ones, I find to be a delicate balance, and this movie does it really well. Again, you fall in love with all the characters in this movie, with the exception of Dr. Sims, but she's also not supposed to be likable.
Yeah, absolutely. The characters are a big standout for me in this movie. Again, going through some of them, to start off with Freddy. Freddy remains one of my favorite, if not my all-time favorite villains in horror films. And one thing I appreciate about Freddy in this movie is that he's still scary and kind of like how you've said before, a real bastard of a villain. I enjoy seeing that, especially because of how Freddy eventually, devolves into a more cartoonish boogeyman character in the future films. We'll get into that at some point down the line. Also, a big part of why Freddy works is because of Robert Englund. He gives the character so much essence, and I don't think any other actor could really capture what he did with the character.
Well, let's see. They've tried a couple of times and it hasn't worked. But again, we'll save that for future reviews. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Freddy is still an absolute bastard in this movie. Like, I mean, killing a recovering drug addict by forcing them to overdose is just one of the lowest, nastiest things you can do. And again, Freddy is still scary at this point. He's not a Looney Tune like that he would become basically starting in Dream Master. But in this one, he's still he's an absolute bastard of a villain. And again, his one liners are still threatening and mean spirited and just nasty as opposed to, again, cartoony. And that kind of leads well into one of my big pros. You mentioned the sort of a boundless imagination a few minutes ago, Cade. That boundless imagination shines like a diamond in this movie in regards to the kills. For Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a lot of iconic kills in this franchise. This movie, in my opinion, has the best in the series. You've got the marionette kill of Philip. You got the TV kill with that instantly iconic line of, welcome to prime time.
I also love how that line was improvised by Robert Englund.
Yeah. Again, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you get the maybe not the most violent or creative of kills, but the emotional forced overdose of Taryn. You got the very brutal yet very short death of Lieutenant Thompson, and then you got the shocking death of Nancy Thompson. And then you got a great Freddy death on top of it, where he's, literally ripped apart by beams of light as he's being, as his corpse is getting like sprayed with holy water.
Yeah, the kills in this movie are definitely great. I think the death of Philip when he falls is definitely one of, if not my favorite kill in the franchise. But apart from the kills, getting back to some of the other characters like you were talking about. So regarding Nancy, it's so cool to see Nancy again in this movie because, I mean, in my opinion, she's one of the best protagonists in horror films. She's intelligent, she's competent, she's determined, and she's a character who you can easily get attached to. And part of that is because of Heather Langenkamp's performance, because she does such a great job making Nancy feel like a character who you can get attached to and who you can root for. So that's definitely a big highlight in this movie. And I love how she becomes the leader of the Dream Warriors. It also makes a lot of sense considering how she's a character who's already gone up against Freddy.
Yeah, and Heather was dearly missed in Freddy's Revenge. I think we can both agree on that one.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, she doesn't miss a beat. I love the fact that they had the balls to kill her off.
Yeah, they did, and it is really sad, but it also shows that it was a movie that was willing to take risks, which is what I appreciate.
Yeah, because if the main character always survives, it kind of lowers the tension. But, this one, they follow through on it. And while it's not the most creative death in the series, it's still pretty damn emotional because our main heroine just got written out of the series.
Yeah, and apart from Nancy, one other character that I actually want to highlight is Neil. So, what I like about Neil's character is that he's a guy who isn't really sure if he fully believes what the kids are telling him and what Nancy's telling him and what she's been through with Freddy. But despite that, you can tell that he cares a lot about these kids and that he's willing to do whatever he can to help them. And with that, despite not being fully on board at the beginning, he's a character who you can get attached to because he's just a morally good person.
Yeah, no, I really like that about his character as well. I like it when horror movie characters maybe don't 100% believe what's going on, but they're willing to hear people out and at least give them the benefit of the doubt. That's why I love Sheriff Brackett in the original Halloween so much. Like, he doesn't 100% believe Dr. Loomis, but he's willing to hear him out. And over the course of both that movie and this one, both characters learned that, oh, horrible things really are happening. I'm kind of glad I gave these people the benefit of the doubt. So maybe I can, help in some way and, maybe prevent the loss of further lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting into some of the Dream Warriors, to start off with the character of Kristen, apart from how great Patricia Arquette is in the role, I also really like Kristen's ability to bring other people into her dreams. I also really liked her dynamic with Nancy, the sort of mentor-mentee relationship that they had with each other. I also like how Kristen is a very different character than Nancy. And that's what made her stand out because, having protagonists that are so similar to each other just gets really boring really quickly.
Yeah, I love their kind of, you said sort of mentor mentee, but they also have big sister, little sister dynamic. And I think they play off each other really well because they're both very talented actresses. I mean, hell, Patricia Arquette went on to become one of the most decorated actresses in Hollywood history.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the other Dream Warriors are highlights. I like Joey's character. Will and Taryn, I think, are fun to follow. And another character that I do enjoy is Kincaid.
Oh, I love Kincaid. He has just got such a mouth on him, and he lets everybody have it with both barrels.
Yeah, I love his sarcastic sense of humor, and I think that he just brings so much energy to the screen, which is always fun to see.
Yeah, no, I love a good wise ass, and Kincaid is a very good one.
Yeah. And I think if I have maybe one more pro, that would probably have to be the production design. Some of the sets for this movie, I think, are just really well crafted. One that stood out to me the most was the boiler room, where the characters save Joey from Freddy, or the scrap yard where Neil and Don Thompson go to deal with Freddy's remains. I also really like the redesign of the Elm Street house that we see in the Dream World. So yeah, from a production standpoint, I think that this is one of the best and most creative Elm Street movies.
Yeah, no, I have to completely agree. It's either the original or this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now that we've gone through all our pros, let's get into the few cons that we have with this movie. Do you want to start?
Sure. I don't have a whole lot of cons because I really do like this movie. It's maybe not my favorite in the series. The original still has my heart, but this is definitely up there.
Well, I mean, the original is one of the best horror films ever made. Come on, man.
I know. But my only real con is, does it feel like Dr. Sims kind of just disappears from the movie and then like never reappears? I mean, she's not like I wouldn't say she's like a main character, but she was definitely a prominent supporting character. And as I was watching it again with you as we were getting ready to review this, it feels like, oh, they're definitely going to kill this character off. And they never do. And again, she kind of just disappears. Am I the only one that finds that odd?
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's not as big of an issue for me, but I can see what you mean. If I had any, maybe not huge cons with this movie, but one I want to bring up is, to me, some of the Dream Warriors, I think, get killed off a little too easily. Those characters, and specifically being Will and Taryn, when we see Taryn have her brief fight with Freddy, but then he kind of just takes her out pretty easily. And the same thing happens with Will when he unlocks his potential as the Wizard Master, then he blasts Freddy before Freddy just easily takes him out. So, I mean, I think it makes sense for some of the Dream Warriors to not survive the movie, but I just kind of wish that some of them put up more of a fight against Freddy, if that makes sense.
I'll definitely will give you that one. For me, that's not really a con per se, but no, I definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and if I had just maybe one little con left with this movie, it would probably have to be the final scene when we see Neil asleep and then we see the light turn on in the miniature Elm Street house that Kristen made. I know that this is something that happens in a lot of Elm Street movies and just horror movies in general, having one little scare or little hint that the villain hasn't been fully defeated. That said, it's still something that I've gotten really tired of with horror films in general, especially when they're in a franchise. Can't a movie just end? Do we always need to have one little hint that the evil's not dead yet?
Yeah, for me, that feels really like sequel baity, especially in this one for some reason. I don't know why it doesn't hit me as hard in, say, the original or Freddy's Revenge. It feels very tacked on, I think is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah, but it doesn't ruin the movie by any means. But to close this off with our final score for this movie. Now, is it my favorite Elm Street movie? No, my favorite is still the original, but I think it's definitely one of the best ones. So with that, with all my pros, I'm probably going to give Dream Warriors an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good entry in the franchise. It's a good movie in general. So yeah, I'm going to give it an 8.
I'm actually going to be even more generous than you in this one. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I really, really like this movie. I think this is a worthy sequel to the original, which Freddy's Revenge never really quite felt like, and definitely not any of the following sequels, which again, we'll get to those another time. But yeah, no, just a really good movie. It's got really good acting across the board. It's got very imaginative kills that are boosted up greatly by some very good practical effects. I just really like this movie. If this series was just Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, and New Nightmare, I think we'd have like a perfect trilogy here. But no, we've got to get through the tidal wave of crap that's coming.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you all again next time.